Good afternoon. I guess we're going to begin now. My name is Peter Dunnaville, and I'm doing a presentation on hard history with my father, Clarence Dunnaville. I'd like to, before we start, I'd like to thank the Lemon Project. I'd like to thank Dr. Jody Allen. And my father's going to start with the presentation, and just to let y'all know, he's got real world experience in dealing with segregation and discrimination and civil rights.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. And today, you know, we're going to deal with some hard history. The nation really is being torn apart by people who are falsely claiming that critical race theory is being taught to children in school. And the biggest proponent of that is our governor, Governor Gunter. And I'm here today really to flatly reject that, to offer some suggestions that I think will help us move forward as Black people in saving and perpetuating Black history. And in doing so, I want to go back in history to the beginning when America was founded. Now, Peter is a researcher, and I'm a lawyer. Peter's a lawyer also. He graduated from William and Mary Law School. But I spent my whole life as a lawyer, trying cases all over the country. I was a corporate lawyer for AT&T. I worked for on a lot of different projects as a volunteer. I was a lawyer with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights under law in Mississippi. In 1967, was chased out of Mississippi with a shotgun. So I have been around, and I'm really a veteran in this field. But we really have to do something. The problem really is not just teaching hard history to in elementary to white children, which they object to because they say it makes them nervous or it makes them feel guilty. The problem is also as much that Black children don't know hard history. So we have to get in there and make sure our history is known. Now, with that introduction, we prepared a paper. It's not very long, I think it's about 8 pages. And it's on the hard drive. And you can get that if you want with our presentation from William and Mary. I'm not going through that in detail. Because I think what we're gonna say overall and the interaction that I want from you is more important. What I said in here in this paper is important. It's factual. And it summarizes the overall presentation that we're going to give. Let us look at the picture on the wall there. That man. Does anyone have any idea who he is? No. Who said that? Did someone say James the First?
Yes, I did. I did.
Yes, that is James the First. Why did I put up James the First? Because he started it all. He is a guy who founded that place just down the road a few miles, Jamestown. But he didn't start slavery. No. He had an indentured servant system. The indentured servant system. Now, in 1619, they brought in the slaves, first slaves. They were captured from a ship that was taking them to the Dutch West Indies, with a Portuguese ship. And they did enslave them. But they gained their freedom, and that is why we had free Africans. Up until the time of the Civil War. Their descendants and other people who were free were the free Africans. And you had the free African descendants of free African people, African heritage, and the enslaved people. And there was always the fear among the enslavers that the free people would conspire with the enslaved people and cause trouble. And that is what happened. And that caused the colonization society to be formed in Liberia. And there's a long history of that, and I won't go into that, but the first people that came here was James the First. James First didn't have slavery. It was his grandson. Let us have the next slide.
You can skip this all.
Okay.
Skip through that. That's the same guy as well. Next one. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of show how fabulously luxurious the man was. But it was the Stewart family that began the slave trade. It was the royal family started it.
Yes,
And
James II, that's who I'm looking for.
no.
No, I mean, not James.
That's
Yes,
Charles.
James II. Charles II. No, James first. Yes, James II. Remember, he was the Duke of York,
Yes.
and he was a guy. His brother was Charles II. They both were grandsons of James I. Those guys started in the slave trade. And the guy who became James II, he stamped on the
Branded.
branded on his chest, on the chest of slaves. The Duke of York, and that was him. He was the Duke of York. That started the slave trade in America. Charles II, with his brother, who became James II. And the next guy, I think it's up there, would be my 11th great grandfather. That guy, his name was Colonel John Page. Colonel Page owned all this land that you're sitting on right now. He owned all of colonial Williamsburg. My 11th great grandfather, Colonel John Page. And what he did, he collaborated with Dr. Blair, who everybody connected with William and Mary will say is, and it's true, was the founder of William and Mary. But Dr. Blair was a minister. He didn't have any money. He was a very distinguished minister. In fact, he was the top minister in the colony at the time. But it was the money men that really contributed to the university. And Matthew Page, the Colonel Page, my 11th great grandfather, died in 1692. And his son, Matthew Page, took over his father's wishes and directions. And his son, Matthew Page, was one of the first trustees of William and Mary College and University. That is the background. I am here at home. My ancestor once owned all of this. And it is because of slavery. If you open Wikipedia, you can do it now on your phone, if you have phone service, and look up Colonel John Page. And directly under that, you will see it says he, as his occupation was, that he was a plantation owner, and that he was a slave trader. That's on Wikipedia. That was him, the guy who started this university. He was the agent of
Charles
the
II.
Duke of Charles II and the Duke of York. He was their agent. And he had an agreement that he would get 7% of every slave traded. That's right. 7%. He started slavery in America. The reason we put up James I first is because James I didn't have the slaves. They didn't believe in slavery in England. Slavery was outlawed in England against the law originally. And that is why the Portuguese the French, the Dutch, they all had slavery. England did not, because Parliament didn't approve it, and it was not in England. Now, in order to have slavery, Charles II, he didn't get the government to get into the slave trade. He went outside of the government and he formed a company called the Africa Company. And that private company with stockholders, they are the ones who ran the slave trade and implemented the slave trade. Now, England benefited because all of the resources went to England, and England's ships were built, the ships were built in England, all the shipbuilders made money on everybody, so they loved it. And some of the wealthy English people, they slipped maybe a few slaves in, but by and large, they didn't have slaves. And the law was clear. Peter found a case, a law case, where the chief judge, the equivalent of the chief judge of England, is termed in a case, a little case, that the minute that a slave puts up his foot in England proper, he was free. In England. But they also said that the colonies were not subject to this rule. And that was made possible by the Virginia House of Burgesses and the Virginia Council, Governor's Council. That is the background that we're in. Slavery, the slave trade. And did we get the picture, page up yet? No, I forgot to page up. You'll get his picture. That was the guy who started. So I have to start from that. And they created the slave trade, a false narrative that Africans were heathens, that Africans were heathen, uncivilized. Yes, it was false. They knew it was false. At the time they brought the 20 and odd slaves to America, those slaves were from the Congo Kingdom. The Congo Kingdom in Africa had been a Christian kingdom for 2 centuries. They knew that. There were bishops in England, bishops in the church of the Catholic Church, approved by the Pope from the Congo. At the time that these guys were saying that the Africans were uncivilized heathen. And that narrative is what follows us today. The Africans were heathen, uncivilized. Created because of slavery and greed, untrue. They said slaves were heathen, uncivilized. The greatest center of learning in the world was at Timbuktu. And Timbuktu was in the area that they were taking slaves from, in Mali. So this is the history that is not known. And I'm bringing this out because this is accurate, hard history that people need to know and understand about people of color, Black people in America. That is fundamental. So you gotta start there. Now we can go on forward and we'll go into the Civil War and after the aftermath. Well, we start there with the negative image of Black people. And in 1900, the late Du Bois, Dr. Du Bois, he had an exhibit in Paris, simply to try to negate the fact that the image of Black people was wrong. An image in Paris in that was in 1900. So we've been fighting this thing for a long time. It is the false image that we're dealing with. Now, we're gonna move on to get to the major problem, because I don't want to take too much time. Peter has a solution, a suggestion for a national Black monument to Black freedom that I would like for you to hear about. Just going down the points that we think need to be made regarding our game plan, okay? The first thing that is needed, and this should be throughout the United States, and certainly at the college level, because kids know nothing about history, nothing. History is not taught, and that is a big part of the problem. And Governor Youngkin is trying to destroy history, Black history, but in fact, it's not even being taught in many respects. So we need to first have universal, mandatory curriculum in all colleges and universities, that history is required as a GER, general requirement for graduation, for any degree, yes, any, whether it's in math or science or history itself or liberal arts. History is a GER required. And that it should include specifically African-American history, true African-American history, and true African history from 1500. That is when the slave trade really got underway, even though the Portuguese were there a little bit early. But from 1500, I think that would be okay. That is the first requirement. And that is a major requirement. And now the second thing is, what about teachers? Teachers are like warriors. It is amazing how, I mean, they have to have stamina. It is incredible what is required and asked of teachers. So we've got to make sure that they have the tools they need to work with. They need to have textbooks, good textbooks. We need to go into the public, go with the publishing text. We've outlined 16 things that we think there should be relating to hard history. But in the interest of time, I'll just flip through real quickly. Because I know we gotta get down, and I really want you to hear Peter's proposal.
I guess another thing that has been mentioned is slaves in the antebellum South were capital. People insured them. There wasn't any money at the time. That's how they transferred wealth when people would die. So I just wanted to make that point. And that's how cities in England like Bristol, Manchester, Liverpool, they completely developed because of the slave trade.
Okay, let me just run through these real quick. I said 2 semesters of art history. We should include the atrocities against Native Americans, Italian Americans, and all Americans in the art history. Because, for example, the governor of Florida, he's an Italian American. He may not even know that Italian Americans were not white. No, they weren't. There was a riot and lynching of Italians. And President Benjamin Harrison named Columbus Day because of the lynching of the Italian Americans. And because, huh?
Gave him 25,000.
And he gave them, how much did he
The
give?
King of England, 25,000.
You mean of Italy?
Yes.
Yes, right. He paid reparation to the King of Italy and named Columbus Day because of the lynching of Italian Americans. Yes. So this fact needs to be known. He is running around talking about critical race theory. Let us talk about bringing the Italian problem that we have, that we overcome. And that is why America's great, because it sees these are problems. America was a violent place against many people. Yes, and against many people. But we have worked to overcome. Martin Luther King. I was at the March on Washington, and I was a part of the scene of We Shall Overcome. I was there. And we have to an extent. Let me get through these.
Go ahead.
All right. We got it. We talk about, so one of my points is America. My third point is America's a violent place. So we need to know that there's violence that needs to be a part of it. Teachers must be trained to teach art history in all the branches of education, from kindergarten through graduate school. Of course, it's not going to be the same, but they need to know how to deal with it. Because my grandson is 10, and we need to have teachers who can deal with students on that level and just give him just enough that will satisfy him, but will be the truth. So they need to be taught to teach hard history throughout the education system. That is point 4. Point 5, we need special programs to be established, because just having the plain ordinary programs we have now of Black history and Black studies are not ample. And then I mentioned textbooks before. That is a major problem. You have, for example, Governor DeSantis. He has walked law there, where the textbook, well, people know it's woke, but I said,
He doesn't know what he's talking about either. Wrong.
I don't know what, but woke, it is woke, really.
Yeah.
But Peter reminded me when I say woke, I say woke. But in any event, it is the law that they cannot teach it. We have to deal with that. And then here's a big one. We need to name schools and colleges and universities, schools within colleges and universities, after professors, lawyers, and other people who made progress, who made an impact in the struggle. And my suggestion is that William and Mary Law School name its law school the Spotswood W. Robinson School of Law. William and Mary named its law school the Spotswood W. Robinson School of Law. Why Spotswood Robinson? He was the lawyer who tried the Brown of Education case. He was one of them, probably. He was the chief judge of the Court of Appeal to Washington, D.C. He was from Richmond. That would make, if William Murray named his law school Spotswood Robinson Law School, that would make a tremendous impact. Moving on down the line, one of the most important points is to be a partnership with historical Black colleges and universities. That is extremely important. They can contribute so very much. If programs even like the Lemon Project partner with Black colleges. And then museums and national associations and other organizations, they could play a critical role. A young woman who made the presentation at lunchtime, what she's doing is important. She can play a role. And corporate leaders, corporations, they need to be involved as well. And then there should be open discussion within classrooms and on the college level of critical race theory. There should be, it should not be swept under the rug. Before I turn it over to Peter to talk about his project, I just want to say that critical race theory is not a bad thing. Derek Bell was the man who really thought of critical race theory. He was a lawyer, much like me. His career crossed with mine. He was a lawyer in the Justice Department just a few years before I was there. I knew of him because at that time we were fewer than 10 teams. I mean, Black lawyers in government and total government. And it was only a few of us. Burke was there in 59. I was there. He started in 54, I believe. I started in the government in 57. Just a few years behind it. And then he went to Mississippi. He was hired by Thurgood Marshall with the Inc. Fund, the Legal Defense Fund. And I followed him. I was with the Lawyers Committee in 1967. And he was gone then. He went to start teaching. But all he thought was, in critical race theory, that cases, we can win cases in litigation. I won a lot of cases. But cases do not fix the structure, the problem. Cases go forward and say you can't do it going forward. But what about the problem that's happening? So he was talking about structural changes in critical race theory. In the case of Brown against Board of Education, Derek Bell, he was against it. He said it didn't do the job. Well, it did not. And what I did when I was in corporate America, I tried to fix it. So I went in and I formed organizations that were dealing with a structural problem, trying to change the behavior of the people who were there and to have opportunities for other people to advance. So basically, I'm simplifying it, but that is what he is talking about. It has nothing to do with the history of Black people. Peter, tell them what you're going to do.
Okay.
It is,
But
it is marvelous.
first, well, I guess I'll begin with talking about monuments. I just learned recently that the Statue of Liberty was originally made to celebrate the end of slavery. But because of Reconstruction and all of that followed, it was rejected by African Americans because it was so hypocritical by that time. It went up around in the, after the Hayes election. So the fact that that monument was given from France to the United States to represent, the guy who designed it was an abolitionist in France. So he was, reading the newspaper and he was caught up with it. And, when the surrender happened, he came out with the idea. The idea, by the time it got to the United States, things have changed and Black people were back on the bottom of the run. And there's a quote by W.E.B. Du Bois where he's talking about he was going to Europe and he saw the Statue of Liberty and it made him angry because, he was segregated on the boat and there were European immigrants coming in. And he just kind of, the duality just kind of made it untenable.
And I want to mention that was him going through Paris for the exhibition that I spoke of earlier. When he went to Paris for the exhibition in 1900, that is when he was segregated, and that is when he found it.
So when I think about it, the size and the grandeur and the scale of the Statue of Liberty is overwhelming. And that's what the French thought of what was happened at Appomattox, more or less, the surrender. So I think that there needs to be a monument in Appomattox to the end of the war, what happened there. They've been trying to build a monument to peace at Appomattox since maybe 10 years after the war.
Yeah.
And continuously, people from all over the South complain. And when my father was growing up, and his grandmother lived in Appomattox.
Yes.
And
I grew up there.
Oh, he would go to the surrender grounds when he was he was chaperoning his older aunt. When she go on dates, they go to the surrender grounds and it was bombed out like Afghanistan or something.
Yes, when I was a boy, I mentioned earlier, I think I did, that I was an Appomattox. If I didn't, I was an Appomattox. Visiting my grandmother, and I went to the surrender ground. There's a park there now. But when I was there, it looked like Afghanistan. It was bombed out. It was totally red. And it was rebuilt, but it was rebuilt as a park, not as a monument to Black freedom. So Peter feels that there should be a national monument to Black freedom. This is why it is an unknown fact by many that the final battle of the Civil War was in Appomattox. It is called, you have to read, again, this is hard history. You've got to read between the pages and read many books. I have tons of books like Wilderness Life on the table. Tons of them. Peter reads them all and gives them to me, make me read it. But he's the one who did all this, these things up. But Appomattox is the cradle of freedom for Black people. Robert E. Lee surrendered there. Everyone knows that. But why did he surrender that? He surrendered there because of the Battle of Appomattox Station. He was on the run from Grant, hoping to reach North Carolina. If he had reached North Carolina, he would not have surrendered. The Civil War would not have ended at that time. And we don't know what would have happened to Black people. Because Lincoln said, just a few months before the war ended, that the future of slaves would be left to the courts. And what happened in the courts? Well, I've talked about that in my printed statement. The Supreme Court of the United States had written 2 years before the Civil War started that Black people had no rights, that white people were bound to respect. That is what he said. In the Dred Scott case, Supreme Court, just the chief of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice, Black people had no rights that Black people were bound to respect, that they were from uncivilized people. Supreme Court said that they weren't civilized. And he further said they weren't slaves for their benefit. That is in the Supreme Court case in 1957. And Lincoln said he would leave slavery, the decision to the court. So if Lee had gotten away, slavery may not have been the way it did. Certainly would not have been the way it did. So the Battle of Appomattox Station was crucial. He was defeated there supply trains were waiting for him at the station. And the Union troops got there first. And they stopped the train. And they overtook the train. Killed all the people who were
There was a battle.
supporting, there was a battle. And controlled the train. What did we do? We started to try to take back the train. So that he could get to North Carolina. He lost the battle. The best thing about it that nobody knows, and you have to look real hard for this again, it's our history. But Black troops from the Union Army, the 15th Count Corps, the 15th Corps, I think it was. They participated in the final battle of Appomattox Station. They weren't part of it. The Battle of Appomattox Station was the final battle of the war. It was the reason that we surrendered, and Appomattox is sacred ground. Peter, can we put up the map? Do we have a map?
We'll try.
Do you have the map?
Yeah, there's one that's a map. The thing about the Battle of Appomattox Station was that it was lost. They didn't know where the battle had actually occurred until someone working for the Parks Services, through going through old notes and records that the general wrote at the time, he was able to find out where the Battle of Appomattox Station occurred. And it turns out that it occurred where the current city of Appomattox is located. Like, they moved it closer to the train station, which was where the Appomattox Station train station was.
Yes,
And so,
maybe I could stand, Peter, maybe you could stand.
but so
and
that little yellow thing right there with an arrow peeking up, I can, they got it.
Got it.
But that's where my dad's grandmother and grandfather's farm was. Right behind it, the blue is what the Battlefield Trust bought, that land in the back of it, the blue. And I guess you can see the train station and how the battle was fought. It was between artillery and the cavalry, and Custer was there. So there were the Confederate armaments that were in the blue, which was like the high ground. So the whole time everyone was growing up, their family, their farm was there, and nobody knew where that it had happened on that ground. It was history lost, more or less. And the interesting thing is that in Appomattox, my dad's great grandmother, she was born enslaved there. And she was born enslaved to the gentleman, or the man who was her father. And he was a Confederate. He was in the Confederate Congress. He was the Speaker of the House. Now, when the war ended, they were in Appomattox, not in this part of Appomattox, but yeah, because
they were in a couple of miles up the road.
because after Richmond fell, this his name was Thomas Bocock. He took the train and he went home to Appomattox. Lo and behold, a few days later, the surrender happens there. And at the time, my dad's great grandmother was maybe 6 or 7. And her situation was that her mother died shortly after she was born. And they brought her into the big house, or they brought her in and she grew up there. And this was after slavery. So she stayed with them until 1876, which is also known for the year that Rutherford B. Hayes won the election. They were married. She got married in his house. He had a house in Lynchburg as well. And the girls that were there, because these were her half siblings. So right, so she grew up with, one was Willie,
the brother.
that was closest to her age. So they grew up during this period of time, Reconstruction. And by the time everything ended up, you know, she would have to go to the back door to see her brother. Or he would have to go through the back door to see his sister. It's kind of everything is tangled up and intertwined. But so I would think that what happened on that land was the French had the right idea in terms of the monumentalness of it. And, you know, here's something that important that happened. I'm not thinking in terms of now, but I'm thinking in terms of couple 100 years, 150 years from now. People are going to want to know what happened on that site. And people should know what happened on that site. Every time I drive by there, I mean, there's not much there. And that's by design. But the interesting thing is that the people who live in the village of Appomattox, they were always okay with having something built there. And if you take and say Gettysburg, how much Gettysburg has benefited from the battle there, which wasn't, I mean, it was, yeah, it wasn't like the last battle. So I think that the Battle of Appomattox Station, they could build a monument or something to, you know, show everyone that this is where it happened. Be it a monument that is as tall as the Statue of Liberty and broken chains. I mocked up a little picture, but I think that if people knew that spot was where this important thing happened, they would hold more reverence for it. And I think that most African Americans would want to go to Appomattox. Yeah, that's the mock-up I made right off of 460. But
Oh my.
so I think that that would go a long way to easing the divide, because if it's not, if you know something and it's not shown, and it's hidden more or less. And I guess, Dad, do you have anything else to say?
Well, I wanted to just explain that Appomattox is where it is, not far from it. And it is where slavery ended. But very few people know that. School children. Most school children never heard about it. It is not taught in school. If you ask my grandson, well, he knows, but the children in his school, in his class, they have no idea
The
about
majority of
that.
them still think that.
So it is, again, an important fact. Black freedom began at Appomattox. That if Custer had lost to Lee's forces, and Lee had escaped, gotten his supplies from the train, and escaped to Appomattox, escaped from Appomattox to North Carolina, the Civil War would have been totally different. It would have lasted and continued. Black people would not have been free. The Emancipation Proclamation was a great document, but it was just a political document. It stated all Black people are free, but it didn't make any Black people free. Again, that is a good example of critical race theory in my mind, because it's something somebody proclaimed Black from now and forth, not henceforth, all black people are free. Well, people working on the plantation, did anybody free them? No. They didn't become free by the Emancipation Proclamation. They didn't become one drop free, not one person free by the proclamation. It was just an announcement. Nothing happened. It was announced. But black slaves in Virginia, they were still there. If they could escape, they got away and followed the Union Army. But if they couldn't get away, they were still there. It was not until after we surrendered at the battle, because of the Battle of Appomattox Station, that slaves were free. People do not know that. People talk about the Emancipation Proclamation. It's a great document, I agree, in principle. And that is a part of America, because America continues to work towards their goals and objectives. It was an aspirational document. Aspirations. People should all be free. Yes, they should be. But now, are they? Is the question you have to ask. And the answer is no, they are not. So that is why Appomattox is extremely important to Black people, to our history. And people have to know that. So we've gone a long way. We talked about an overview. I've not covered the material in detail. You can get that from the hard drive presentation if you want. I've tried to just give you a background and overview. Peter and I have worked on this for a long time. And the results are in the document between here. But we would like to make this interactive. So what we'd like to do now, I think, is to just open it up for you to argue with us and tell us why William Murray should not name
Open debate.
or tell us why, or tell us why American history should not be required as a GER, a requirement for all graduates of college, any type of college in the United States of America. You tell us, you argue with them. Or why we should get involved with textbook manufacturers and tell them that we don't like the textbooks they're putting. They're not giving us truth. They must tell the truth. And we must give them the truth. And we must coordinate our efforts with the historical Black colleges and universities. That is extremely important. And there are many other factors. But what do you think? Please, yes. Okay.
So I totally agree on everything you said.
Oh, no.
But it's baked in. And how do we unbake it? I think that some of the teachers in our schools and kindergarten through 12th grade don't know how to teach history, don't
Right.
understand
That
history.
is what-
We don't get that in college, like you had said. But it's baked in, the cultures in the schools. The stuff is, it really takes all of us to go to our school board member meetings and say, and talk to our legislators and talk to Youngkin if we can. I mean, it is. I mean, this is a problem. I've been watching it
It is baked
for
in.
some time. You're absolutely
It is
right.
baked in.
Yeah.
And that is why we call this, a game plan. It's gonna take a long time. It has taken us many years to get to the point where we are. Hopefully it won't take that long. But we have to start. So everybody has to be on the first, get people on the they have to get on the scale, they have to get with us. Corporate America has to dig in. People who give conferences every day, they have to teach this stuff. If people knew this history, if people knew these facts, they would have a different attitude. Truth shall make you free. That is a fact. Truth shall make you free. We have to teach the truth. And people have to know it. And teachers have to teach it. Teachers have to know it as well. And colleges and universities, they must deal with it and teach it realistically, holistically. That is what is needed. And it has to start with the college and university and training teachers, because it is a problem. Yes. So we're just talking about it. This lady was first.
I'm in Appomattox, and I love this statue. Where in your game plan is it that you will go to Appomattox City Council or their chamber and say, hey,
We haven't gotten that far.
let's talk?
Yes, I know.
We got some time.
I hear you, and I'm well aware of it. Yes, indeed. Yes, this is conceptual. This is aspirational.
Understood, but let's get them fired up.
Well, we got a way to
You
go.
gotta become an advocate over here.
No, where are you from?
I live in Yorktown, but my husband's roommate undergrad is on the town council in Appomattox.
Really? We need to meet. I'll take him down to the family cemetery,
Okay,
which is on the battleground.
we'll make it happen.
Can we make a group tour? We all.
Yes, yes, it is, they could, Appomattox is my maternal family's home. We mentioned the name Boca. That family used to run the entire place. Boca and Floods. The Floods were their cousins. You could walk in the courthouse of Appomattox, and the first thing you'll see is portraits of all the different Floods. And they ran the whole county for hundreds of years, yes.
Yes, I have a question. Excuse me, I'm not sure if it's Appomattox or not, but I did some research. My 3-time great grandfather was accused of something, and I'm thinking that this was like, they found it in the Freedmen's Bureau of Records. I'm thinking that they went to Appomattox for the trial. Do you know if Appomattox, and he lived in York County, do you know if Appomattox would have had any significance in that time period, like the 1860s?
In the 1860s,
1865.
yes, the answer here. Lynchburg was where they handled disputes for that area with the reconstruction, people there. Because there was some disputes that arose in connection with the Boca people, my people, and they were handled in Lynchburg. And the sheriff of Appomattox was Boca, who was my grandmother's cousin, first cousin, Billy Hicks. So that made a big difference in the sheriff, so with both, so. But it was done in Lynchburg, I think. That's what.
I guess I have an observation,
Yes, sir.
and I'm sure you wouldn't disagree with this. But we have to begin with people, African American people. Are going to have to take more responsibility for educating our own children. And it ceases to make sense to trust others to educate our kids, our children on the subject of history, of our history.
Yes, sir.
I can deal with mathematics and, foreign languages and
Well, sir,
science. I'm cool with that. But you can't teach. I don't think anybody else turns over their kids to somebody else and says, teach them how to be them.
well, if you notice, one of the biggest points I've made, I talk about the HBUs.
Yeah, as we see them here. Well, absolutely. And I think they can be a great,
That is where we start. We need to involve the HBUs in the total plan. That is a big part of my game plan. And I've been talking about that. A big part of my game plan is to get the HBUs involved in this whole problem, this whole concern. And they're the ones we're gonna look to, who in many respects carry the ball. Along your lines, they will be carrying the balls in some respects. My educators, I don't know if you've heard of him, Dr. Benjamin Quarles. He was he was my professor at Morgan. And I became who I am basically because of Ben Quarles. I've known him from, of course, I was a college student, he was a great professor, and other people. So yes, that is, you're correct. But the problem is that many people, and I started off with this thing, Black people don't know their history.
And
They don't know that the greatest center of learning in the world for centuries was at Timbuktu in Mali. They don't know that. Yes, you had that.
I think that kind of add to what he said. I think, as someone who looks like me,
Yeah.
I grew up and was told, we don't talk about religion, we don't talk about politics,
Right.
we talk about money. But most people in the Black community that I communicate with, that was kitchen table conversation growing up. That was something you had to talk about because it impacted your everyday life far more than it impacted my everyday life. And because of that fact, I get that we need to be teaching our children about our heritage. My grandfather's from Puerto Rico. I know very little about my heritage. I wasn't raised to speak Spanish. There were things that I lacked because they chose not to because they wanted to assimilate
Americanized.
into a world where they could exist without being talked down upon, treated differently. So with that being said, we have to acknowledge that Black history is American history.
Yes,
And therefore it deserves a place in our K through 12. It deserves a place in our colleges. Yes, it is our ability to teach what we know, but it's also our ability to educate our educators to know all the things that we maybe don't know.
yes,
So that every child in this world, Black, white, whatever, has access to American history, which is Black history.
yes, that is very, very important. And I think when you integrate it and people see that, for example, I gave the situation relating to Italian Americans. I mean, when you look at the picture of that, and when you look at what happened to Japanese Americans, and you look at what happened to Native Americans, and you look at the total perspective, it helps children, all children, to get a grip on America. And then when you give them to say, well, look, what we're doing in America is different. Everybody in the world has been brutal, but we're moving forward and we're getting rid of this stuff. And this is not appropriate in America now. And we're getting forward. We're moving forward. And we're making the principles of the Declaration of Independence happen. When you teach it in that context, That is what has to be done. You have to give them the hard history, let them know what happened, let them understand it, and then tell them what we're gonna do about it. Yes,
Yeah, so one of the problems is more of like an institutional thing, which is, and I think anybody who's an educator knows, right, as goes Texas, so goes the nation on textbook selection.
yes,
Now, I don't know if people know this, but in the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board.
Yeah.
A person can declare any individual as an expert as long as 2 members of the board vote in favor of that individual, regardless of any expertise, any degrees, any experience. And that was how they began to attack the theory of evolution. Oh, it's just a theory. Right? Well, so is the theory that the earth revolves around the sun. Nobody stood behind there and watched it happen. Okay. But this is also how they began to say, oh, we don't need to talk about Cesar Chavez. We don't need to mention controversial figures. And they mentioned Malcolm X. They mentioned Marcus Garvey. Right. And so very quickly, it was the effort to remove anybody that they got hung up upon. And then, of course, you have to add, President Reagan and the moral majority and Jerry Falwell, right? So it's all okay to have their part, right? And so my view is, as an educator is there needs to be a lot more concerted focus on those who select textbooks. And that goes for high school, it goes for college. In the state of South Carolina, they are required in American history courses to teach at least 5 of the Federalist papers, and you may not include any of the anti-Federalist positions. Like, why not just read Brutus alongside, Federalist number 10? Okay, so, right, and when legislators get to make those decisions, we know who they're responding to.
yes,
And there, that's where I think a lot of the action is going to be, is to say, because in Indiana, where I live, they'll actually say, oh, but I don't know about that. You are the expert, you know about that, but I'm just saying that it makes us uncomfortable.
yes.
So to me, that's where the conversation stops, is to say, if I'm the expert, then I should be the one picking what these kids get to read, what we're learning about.
That is what we have to deal with. That we just have to deal with. That is a fact. And especially like Florida, where they have the walk law that precludes them from doing certain things. That is a problem that must be dealt with. Yes.
They've pretty much outlawed the Civil War in Texas.
Yeah.
You can't reference the Civil War in textbooks. In Texas, it didn't happen.
And that's actually something we wrote about in the 60s, was nobody wanted to deal with, historical aggression.
Yeah, the War of Northern Aggression. Recent unpleasant.
Wasn't the Alamo about slavery?
But how information gets into textbooks is now a real problem in the country, because we politicize.
Yes.
And there's no simple way out of.
Well,
Out of
here's a
this.
proposal that we have in our proposal. There could be separate textbooks developed, separate and distinct. And they would be just real hardback textbooks. And they could be developed and used primarily, let's say they developed at Black school university. And they could be developed, but they could share them with others.
Also, digitalization, I think
Yes.
it's helped.
With digitalization and the way
People
That-
can read the
that
document.
technology goes to today, if we could get the books developed, they could be used by others. They could be, the big problem is getting them through these different boards and getting.
Yeah, and I understand that may be expedient, but shouldn't our goal be, our long-term goal?
Yes, to go, yes,
Should be that there's an American history,
yes,
and that's inclusive of all of us, that, facts are facts. I mean,
Yeah,
yes,
even though it's 2023, facts are still facts.
yes. And they need to be communicated and understood.
Yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you, but as she started off, things are baked in to the society.
They are.
People choose to be ignorant to satisfy their self-image and prop themselves up. And so that's an incremental process. Starting with HBCUs is a good way to do it because they will be accepting of the truth of history, of the facts of history. I have no idea how they choose their books. I don't know anything about that. But the information is already out there. Putting it together as a curriculum that's accepted across HBCUs is, I don't know, a different thing, but the bottom line is things are baked into the society and people choose to believe lies. They choose it. So how do you deal with that? Because that's the issue.
So we're out of time for the panel. I'm sorry. So join me in a.